Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, viewers, friends of Ikra TV. Welcome to part 2 of this special program on domestic violence. We've been talking about domestic violence with two very eminent guests of mine, Sadia Mustaq, who's been on my program before, and Iram Khan, who's come today for the first time, who works around domestic violence issues. And we know domestic violence means lots of things to lots of different people. So I'm going to ask Iram, and remember, it's not just, although we've been focusing on women as the victims, but men are victims as well, but also children, because, children growing up in a situation where there's domestic violence in the home, the impact on their lives can be absolutely devastating as well. So let me just ask Iram, who, as I say, has worked in this issue. Domestic violence, normally domestic violence means physically beating somebody up, but that's not itself on its own domestic violence, is it? No. There are other forms of domestic violence which some people may not really understand or recognize. So can you just elaborate around those issues, please?
Of course, yes. So like you said, we always refer to domestic violence as physical violence. Mm-hmm. So in a relationship, we may feel that if we haven't been sort of physically assaulted, that everything might be fine. However, domestic violence now refers to sort of emotional abuse, financial abuse, psychological abuse, and just like Sadia mentioned, there's coercive control. Mm. And all these definitions are within the Domestic Abuse Act.
Right.
So it could be, sort of gaslighting, verbal abuse, name calling, and we do have financial abuse, which is quite prevalent within all communities, right, and is sometimes hidden. And it might be simple as somebody's taken a contract out on your name, a partner's taken a contract out or has taken a loan out. It might be something very sort of hidden or...
So this is somebody taking a loan out in their partner's name without the partner knowing about it?
It could be with the partner knowing as well,
oh,
but
right,
then we're not wanting to then pay towards that. It could be something as simple as that. Or it could be where they don't want their partner to work, or the partner is very reliant on their sort of income, or isolating them so they don't make any friends, they don't get any advice from somewhere. It might be that the partner wants them to stay at home, and then they're giving them a little bit of pocket money, and they might need more money for certain things, but you're only allowed this much. Where have you spent it now? What are you doing with your money? It's just, that's another form of abuse.
It's a form of control.
Them, it's a form of control.
Right. Okay.
Not allowing them to go out and have that independence.
Right. And do you find that some women, because of the cultural issues within our sub-Asian sort of subcontinent community, that some women accept that as their norm, or you feel that the women would like to be empowered to understand some of these issues so they can then maybe change their lives?
When we have certain traditions and norms that work, it's fine. When you're living a happy life and you understand the control element and that's fine. We're not here to sort of say that this is wrong and that's wrong and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. However, people should be aware of what that actually looks like and what that actually means, and that's what we're trying to do now, is raise an awareness. But they should also seek support. We don't want them to sort of leave a relationship. We need them just to seek support and just pick up the phone and maybe speak to somebody and ask them what the process is. If I decide to do this, or this is happening with me in my life right now, what is this? It's not making, I'm not happy about this. And it might be that they just need to offload to someone, but then in the process they're also, sort of finding out what the process might be. If I was to leave this relationship, what my options are. Like you said before, it might be that refuge is something that's sort of immediate. If someone's got an immediate threat, they need to be removed from that property.
This is where they feel their life is in danger.
Where they feel their life is in danger, and there's always enough space where the authorities and the organisations will make sure that safety is paramount when it comes to domestic violence. But then what we don't want to do is leave somebody in a situation where they're more vulnerable. And this is where the support services come in, whether it's an IDVA or a support worker or a family worker. And if you have children involved, then it's the social care that would get involved. And it's just about understanding what each organisation does and what kind of support is available out there.
Right. So, I'll come back to that. But, you've been working in this area for a long time. as I say, over 15 years. Now, as Muslims, if we believe in the principles and the values of Islam, when the Prophet ﷺ came to Makkah, Medina and started the message of Islam, one of the first things that he promoted was the protection of girls and women, right? And that was a fundamental sort of message that he brought about, to say women and girls should be protected. So that should be one of our key principles.
Of course, yeah.
Now, being Muslim, do you find that people tend to forget that tenet of Islam, and that women over the years, because of cultural issues and other issues, have not been receiving that value, that strength, that respect that they actually deserve?
Yes, I do think that sort of religion is all mixed with the traditions and the cultural sort of traditions that have been embedded within certain communities. However, another thing that you touched on before was that we don't speak about this. We don't speak about this because there's always a certain stigma attached to the domestic violence. If something's going on, it's personal to the household. But what we're finding more and more and more now, as research has found, that the impact that this is having on children, it's almost that cycle of abuse which you need to break. Because if you've got an unhappy household, a toxic household, where you're bringing up children, them children will feel the neglect, will hear the abuse, and the impact that has is very severe. And research has shown that child will either become a victim themselves or become a perpetrator.
Yeah.
Like we said, it's learned behaviour. It's not something that someone's born with. But then we have issues of that child not wanting to be around the family home because of the toxic environment and because of the neglect. Then the child will then maybe look at other areas or other safe spaces to hang out in, and it might not be the right safe space for them to hang out in, and people will take advantage of that vulnerability, whether it's getting into the wrong crowds, whether it's getting into the wrong sort of habits. And that's the sort of element that we try to look at, is that the impact that this is having on children as well in a household where children are present. And if they're not present, it's about, like you said, empowering the communities to understand that whatever's wrong is wrong, but there is support out there, and not to just to follow the norms and traditions just because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, Sadia, we talked about the Muslim Women's Council, and although you don't provide direct services, but I'm sure you must be coming across many families. Like, I mean, I was involved in the food bank, setting up of a food bank many years ago in Batley, where I live. In the old days, we had hardly any Muslim people coming to the food bank. Now we know there's quite a lot of Muslim people, particularly women, although there's some refugees, asylum seekers, but also settled communities. Now, we from the Asian subcontinent have been here for 70 years, but there are people coming from our community now to this food bank. So when you got women and children fleeing domestic violence and getting up in a refuge or a secure hotel, or where they've been sort of accommodated as an emergency, what are some of the other issues that faces them? Food, finance, etc., mental health support, counselling support. What happens if somebody comes to you and said, I've been given a refuge, I've been put in a hotel with my children, but that's it. The local authority have done their job. Now I don't know what to do next.
I mean, the first thing that we do is to have an open discussion with them to find out exactly what their issues are, what services they need, what support they need. And as you said, it's a variety of issues. Mental health is a big one. So they need mental health support. A lot of the time the food that's provided in these places is not culturally appropriate for them. There isn't much in the way of vegetarian, or if there's most of the time there's no halal, so it is vegetarian. And obviously they have come from certain backgrounds, they're not necessarily used to that kind of food. So we look at what kind of support they need. It will be with the children as well. The children need their support. It could be as much as clothing. They need appropriate clothing. They need things to occupy the children.
They probably flee with hardly anything.
Exactly, yeah. They haven't got much to their name at all, sadly. And with the food support, we do provide We have a soup kitchen which is called the Curry Circle, so that is where they can come and receive a hot meal. There's no questions asked. It is literally anybody who needs a meal. During COVID and the past few years, we have actually been out to deliver food to people that need it, and a lot of the time it was people that were fleeing their homes because of domestic violence issues. So they could be in hotels, they could be in refugees, so then we would actually provide that culturally appropriate food for them. And there is something that we can talk about with IRAM about a service that we are setting up to provide food that they can actually cook, so basic necessities that they can actually use at home. And it is culturally and religiously appropriate food that we put together for them. So there's a lot of services that they need. If we can't provide those services specifically ourselves, then we have got a range of organisations out there. There are a lot of organisations that we can signpost them to.
I want to come to men and victims of domestic violence, but one of the statistics that I came across was that of the number of Muslim people who are victims of domestic violence, 68% are, from mainly women from the Asian subcontinent. 8% are revert Muslims. Now, I don't know, have you come across revert Muslims who are also victims of because they've got a double whammy, haven't they? Because they've been shunned by their own families, so probably thrown them out from home. They've come into a Muslim family, and for whatever reason, the relationship has not worked, or it's turned toxic, and then they flee that as well. I mean, are the challenges different? Have you come across any examples?
Staying put also support men as well. We come to this issue where it was very difficult for women to seek support because of the stigma attached to that, and it's taken us years and years and years to work on that and sort of support and encourage women to come forward. So it's easier now for women to sort of pick up the phone than it is to men, because there's still that stigma attached. But in terms of what you're saying, I don't think there's any additional sort of barriers that men face anyway, regardless of whether you're a revert or not. But there is still that shame element for men that stops them seeking support. And the same that we had with women. So we're hoping to change that narrative with more and more services available for men, more and more people come forward. And there are sort of these men standing up, again, staying put will support men. There are services out there that do support men.
Right. I mean, you're a Muslim Women's Council. But what happens if a man comes to you and says, I need some help? I'm sure you wouldn't turn them away, would you?
No, definitely not. I mean, when it comes to the food support, for example, we did have a lot of men that were approaching us who had suffered domestic violence, who were fleeing from their homes. So we did provide food as well. Just because we have women in the name, in the title, it doesn't mean that we only support women. We are there for the community. So whoever needs that support. I mean, if you come down to our Curry Circle, for example, on a Thursday, you'll see a lot of men that come for the food support. So the primary kind of engagement is with women, but we do have a lot of men that we support, whether it's at our sessions and whether it's for food support as well. So we wouldn't turn anybody away.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I knew you wouldn't, I'm sure. Although you're, like I say, you're the Bradford Muslim Women's Council, but I know you wouldn't, because I'm sure, knowing you, I know you would make sure everybody gets support. I mean, coming back, one of the big challenges for the public sector is resources. We know, those resources are very finite, and local authorities are struggling providing basic services. Now, this area obviously is a growing area, unfortunately, not just only in our community, but across the board. Now, having your knowledge of working with the public sector and the volunteer sector, do you feel that there is a more serious look now being given to some of these issues, because the government have prioritised violence against women and girls? And do you feel that the local authorities are also sort of much more upfront about wanting to tackle these issues as well?
Of course, 100%. I mean, domestic violence in itself is now classed as a national emergency. And I know there's a lot of sort of emphasis on the violence against women and girls, but Bradford, as a district, as a local authority, has some of the best support services available. And that it doesn't matter whether you're a victim or a perpetrator or a child, We have support that's available as a family, so you can access something. Let's just say you've got somebody that may have anger issues and just can, for whatever reason, is not being able to tackle anything that's happened in their childhood, and then certain behaviours are coming out within their relationship around children. Why do we not seek support for that as a family? Why don't we just seek help? There's no shame in this, because it's about building those relationships and strengthening those relationships. And we have like the Reset program, and there's a program called CHAB, which is Challenging Harmful Attitudes and Behaviours for South Asian Men.
Right.
Perpetrator
So this is
program.
specifically for
So they
South
are,
Asian.
yeah. So there are.
Where can they access these services?
So they can just go online and Google this
Right.
in Bradford and the services that are available, or go on the Bradford website. That will show you what's available.
Is that Bradford Council website?
Bradford Council website as well.
All right. So they can. They look. If men are looking for support, they can go there. Women can.
Yeah,
looking for
there's a
support,
lot
right?
of everything's all uploaded on there. So you've got sort of like your Stay in Port, your Family Action, which will sort of support children as well. So they offer counselling for children that have been affected by abuse. Then you've got sort of young persons IDVAs that will support children in schools.
Sorry, say that again.
It's the Independent Domestic Violence
Right.
Advocates, but for young people.
Right.
And some that could be from 11 plus. In secondary schools, and Family Action support children from as young as 5. So
Right.
there's so many services available out there. You just need to.
Oh,
sort
I
of
mean, one
seek
of the
support.
questions I wanted to ask was, I mean, many years ago, going back probably 35 years ago, I commissioned a report about Asian women and substance abuse, which was an unheard of thing at that time. And some of the responses and the results that came out were shocking, to be honest with you, in a very small Asian community, so Asian subcontinent community. Do you know of any work that has been done to try and capture data around the extent of domestic violence within the Asian, sub-Asian sort of subcontinent community? Has there been any specific work been done?
Yeah, there is an issue with capturing data, and that's because of a number of reasons. A lot of the data, like many women that suffer from abuse, do not come forward for support. It's underreported, which is why we don't have enough data to compare. That's not to say that it doesn't happen in our community at all. We just don't have enough data. But we are moving towards each organisation, institution, for us, you know, the police, schools, health. We are starting to record more and more sort of specific data. But that's the only reason, is it just doesn't get reported enough.
Well, we know for a
various
fact that,
reasons.
lots of around racist incidents, that many people don't report them. We know that as a fact, and that is something that has been challenging for a lot of people. And domestic violence, as you say, there's an issue about izzat and respect and sharam and all that sort of stuff as well, and honour, and therefore people will be probably more reluctant to report it, because then they'll be seen as, if it's men, they'll be seen as they're weak. He's not a proper man, for example. He's suffering of domestic violence from a woman. And these sort of things, this is the mindset we have. And for a woman it's difficult, because there's the issue about izzat and the family structure, I presume. So, I mean, these are some of the issues I presume we've come across already.
Yes, there are certainly issues that still exist, and we're still working on these issues and trying to sort of get support to these marginalised communities. However, we have come a long way. We do find that a lot more people from the South Asian communities are accessing support. We have a growing population of the South Asian community within Bradford, and we have specialist support for them as well, whether it's language barrier, whether it's additional languages, and specialised support. It could be anything around honour-based violence, and we do have the National Karma Nirvana that would support institutions and schools if there was anything around the honour-based violence issues that would affect people.
I mean, I don't know how closely, Sadia, you work with the local mosques in the Bradford district, but I mean, do you feel that the mosques are A, aware of these issues, and B, trying to address some of these issues? As I say, the Prophet ﷺ, when he first started preaching the faith of Islam, one of the first things he did was to try and embed on the fact that women and girls need to be protected and respected and valued. And throughout his life, he showed that as an example. Do you feel that our mosques, A, understand that this is an issue in our community, and B, are not just understand it, but aware of it, and are doing anything to try and sort of impart knowledge around preventing domestic violence, particularly violence against women within their own families?
I think with the mosques there is a lot that can be done. They have Friday sermons, and it's something that with majority of mosques now, a lot of women attend as well as men, and I think that it is a topic that really needs to be brought up within the mosques. And I think that they could really help raising awareness, talking about the Prophet ﷺ and how he was such a great role model. He was such a great example to men and to women about how to behave in your marriage, in your relationships. And as you said, he did try to raise awareness and give us an example of how to lead our lives, how to promote healthy relationships. So that is something that can be imparted within the sermons of the mosques, and also to run awareness raising sessions. A mosque is not just for prayer, it is for the community, and I think that there is a lot of work that needs to be done within that framework so that people can develop as a community. There's so many mosques within Bradford and around the UK, so that is something that definitely they need to take on board. We have tried to work with the mosques with our CSE, so child sexual exploitation work that we had in the past, and it wasn't easy, to be honest, especially with female staff. They did find it quite difficult getting the mosques on board. So there is definitely a lot of work to be done, and these are issues that are relevant to the community, and things like CSC, like domestic violence, is definitely something that the mosque needs to take on board and try and make a difference for the community.
So do you want to say?
Yeah, I feel with the South Asian community, with it being quite a male-dominated culture, it's very important that the males address this issue. We feel that if we have more male role models within the community that address the issue, we can then have people that will follow suit and then be able to make a difference within the communities. More people might be more look to coming towards support if they see somebody addressing that issue. At the moment they might not want to, but if they see somebody that they look up to, or there's a role model or an imam in the mosque that's addressing it, they might be more likely to actually speak to somebody about it. And it's not about sort of divulging your sort of personal circumstances to anybody, but just to offer a safe space, or even if you've got a few posters that highlight the support or the contact numbers that somebody might need. Even display those.
As Sadia said, mosques are not just places of worship. They're supposed to provide a holistic approach to everything, because Islam is a whole way of life. And do you feel that we have imams who have the knowledge and the ability to provide counselling support services in our community? Because that's basically one of the things that people would want when they're counselling support. From what Iram has just said now, that is a vital sort of element of some of the work that needs to be done in mosques and madrasas, not just around domestic violence, but all sorts of things.
Other issues that affect our society, but I think it's more about being able to have that open conversation, and imams welcoming people in to say, feel free to come and have a discussion about any issue that might be affecting you. But the imams may be able to bring the Islamic perspective, which is very important if people
definitely
are a little bit sort of don't understand, or there's the blurry lines or the grey areas. And that's where the perspective that they can bring in. Obviously the cultural aspect and the traditional aspect is something that's quite embedded, but if somebody is a Muslim and wants to know the take Islamically of what's going on in that particular household, then that's where the imam can shed some light.
Okay, one of my dear friends is Sophie Vansi, that I'm sure you would have come or heard of her or come across. She's done quite a bit of work around Muslim women in prisons. I've never thought about this, but next time she comes, and I'm going to ask whether she's got any information about how many Muslim women have ended up in prison. through the criminal justice system because being accused of being of domestic violence. So it'll be interesting to find out. I don't know whether you've come across any information around that or not, because women have gone into prison in some cases because of what you said earlier, and that is their partners have taken out a loan on their name, and they have failed to pay it, and therefore the woman's prosecuted for not paying up or settling the loan, and therefore they ended up in prison.
It would be interesting to know certain case studies just to find out if anything is along the lines.
I mean, Sophie works from the Kismet Centre, and I'm sure she'd be more than happy to talk to you and share some of her knowledge. I think she's doing the 4th research on this topic about Muslim women in prison. She's been on my program on a number of occasions to talk about the challenges that Muslim women face, not just while they're in prison, but also when they come out of prison and in the community. Now, I'm not sure whether you had done any work or are aware of when a Muslim woman leaves a family home, goes into a refuge or in a safe environment, and then when she comes back into the community, I wonder, do you know what sort of reaction she gets? Is that sort of challenging and threatening for them?
It is, it can be, and each individual is different because each families have their own sort of issues and their take on it. But very rarely do we have a situation where we've taken a woman out of an area and then sort of created that little independence and then placed her back in the same area. It's not something that's that's done. We tried to put them in a safer area somewhere else where we look at what support networks they might have in other areas of the country, not just specifically close by or local, just so that they can then rebuild their lives without that extra threat.
Right. There's a woman called Samakta who lived in Lancashire, and she came to Bradford, but unfortunately through her phone he managed to trace her through the location service, and that's how he managed to get here and did what he did, But yeah, I mean, this is an issue that affects women who've gone into prison as well, that when they come out, some of the local communities shun them as well, so they're isolated. So you're saying that any women who has to leave their family home, for her own safety, is usually accommodated somewhere far away.
Yeah, not as close by. We try to make sure that the safety element, obviously we have to be careful, because if all the support network is within that area, again, what you don't want to do is create a vulnerability by placing them somewhere so far that she just have no support, because that emotional support is so important at that particular time of crisis for that woman. So it's sort of logistically, it's something that we look at.
Right. Now I presume similar arrangements will be there for men as well who are fleeing domestic violence.
Of course, yeah.
Obviously the question is, will there be the same amount of resources going into men who are fleeing domestic violence? Because I know that predominantly at the moment this focus on women and girls, isn't it? Which is understandable, because they're the majority of victims.
Yeah, no, men are equally seen as victims now. So, like you said, there was a few years back we'd say that it might have been a different case, but since, I mean, over the last 10 years especially, men have come forward, and support services are sort of across the district that are available to support men's needs.
So, I mean, we're nearly coming to the end of the programme, unfortunately. I mean, if there has been somebody who has been the subject or the victim of domestic violence, whether it's a male or a female, and they've gone through the whole process and now they're happy and content with life, everything's okay, and from their experience they want to share their knowledge and their experience to help other people, is there room for somebody like that, either with the Women's Council or with your organisation or the charities that you've mentioned?
Of course. I mean, they have like the Freedom Programme. They have lots of programmes where they look at survivors and their stories, and it's part of empowerment.
Are these local agencies here with charities? Are you
so they can get in touch
name
with
of them?
They can get in touch with Staying Put, and then we've recently set up a charity called Nourish and Hope, and that's part of the food bank. So we were providing sort of basic food and hygiene products to women and survivors of abuse. So it just creates a safe space, and the details will be coming out and going up on the sort of.
Can you just name them again?
So that's Nourish and Hope.
Nourish and Hope.
Yep, and we've got Staying Put.
Staying Put.
And in terms of they're the ones that they could contact to look at if they wanted to speak about their experiences, and maybe get into some volunteering or to help and empower other women that might have going through the same situation.
I think we always encourage people to share their experiences, because it might encourage somebody who hasn't thought of speaking up to actually speak up and get the help that they need.
Well, I think it's right, and they probably are the best resources because they've gone through the trauma and the trouble and the difficulties, and they can probably signpost people better than anybody else. Can I say thank you very much for coming? Thank you, Iram. I hope you don't find it too difficult. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience, and thank you for sharing some of the positive work that you're doing and what people who are facing domestic violence, whether they're male or female, all the support services that are available over there. You don't need to be staying in an environment where you are the victim of domestic violence, whether it's physical or emotional. Thank you, Sadia, for coming again. Hopefully I'll see you.
Thank you.
As I say, she might take over my role. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it interesting. Inshallah, I'll be with you next Monday. We're talking to the Police and Crime Commissioner, and that should be interesting. So I'll see you then. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.